Hi, friends. Thank you for joining us on our Zoom discussion about Yizkor and how to make it meaningful this year. I know many of you weren't able to make it onto the call, and there was some technical difficulties, so I'd like to recap some of the things that we discussed. You know, Yizkor really belongs in a shul with a Torah, with a minyan, which unfortunately this year we're not going to have. So how do we make Yizkor meaningful in a year like this? It says that when God Almighty presents us with a challenge, He also gives us the remedy to know how to deal with it in the best possible way, which means, in practical terms, that Yizkor, and for that matter, everything we do within Jewish practice today, is meaningful at the home. And I feel like it's worthwhile having a discussion about this, being that so many of us are accustomed to coming to shul on Yizkor to remember our loved ones and so on and so forth. It says, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. The candle or the flame of God is the soul of man. A candle is analogous to the body. The wick and its flame is analogous to our neshama, our soul. While the flame, which has similar characteristics to our neshama, hence the comparison, the soul seems to always want it to ascend higher and higher. It's not satisfied in its current situation. The wick grounds it and pulls it down to earth. The soul, our soul, is always in a state where it wants to ascend higher and higher to its source. It's not satisfied or happy about the journey that it takes down here on earth, having to deal with materialism and all sorts of issues, having to deal with an ego, eating and sleeping and all the things that are necessary in order to live life, let alone in a productive way, but in an unhealthy way. It doesn't want to be a part of any of that. And yet the body schleps it back down to earth, so to speak. However, the soul does recognize that its purpose can only be found when it descends down here on earth into a body. This is where it could find its purpose. If you will, you could compare this to somebody coming out on a day like today, a beautiful day in Southern California, and striking a match during the daytime when the sun is out in its full glory, and trying to benefit from that little match or little candle. It's ridiculous. That little fire plays no role and has no purpose. The soul, while it's in its source, has no purpose. It's completely nullified before its great luminary, its source. Only when it comes down to earth, down here where it's dark and cold, where it exists in the world that would otherwise be indifferent to godliness and goodness and kindness, and it serves as a GPS, right? God's positioning system for the body, in directing it, in living a virtuous and healthy life. Only then can it serve its purpose. So the soul is not in its natural habitat here on earth. Friends, when we recite the Yizkor prayer service on Thursday, Achron Shal Pesach, on the last day of Passover, and we sit down and we concentrate and think about our loved ones, whether it's a parent, a grandparent, an uncle, an aunt, or whether it's the Kedoshim, the holy ones that have sacrificed their life for the sanctification of God. Try to envision this individual sitting or standing before you. Think about what this person would want as a gift. Would the person want something of monetary value? That has no value whatsoever in the world of souls. Because after all, the soul ascended down here to collect mitzvah, to collect good deeds, to illuminate its surroundings, and then when it ascends back upstairs, all it wants is the mitzvah, the good deed, but it no longer has that opportunity. Because the mitzvah was given only to a human being of flesh and blood. And therefore, the value and the importance of the great moment of Yizkor is that we're able to gift our loved ones with a mitzvah, which means to say, by performing a mitzvah in loving memory of a parent, while thinking during the Yizkor prayer of a mitzvah that I could attach in loving memory of a loved one. This is the greatest and really only gift we could offer up to our loved ones who no longer have the opportunity to engage in a mitzvah like you and I do. And when we do it in their memory, this brings merit and elevation and comfort to the soul. And the soul, you could rest assured, thanks us for delivering this gift. In particular, Yizkor and the mitzvah associated with Yizkor is always tzedakah, charity. Particularly in this time where so many people are hurting financially, to lend a helping hand, I guess you could say your dollar goes an extra mile. The mitzvah is that much more significant in this period of great challenges and difficulties. And therefore, Yizkor this year not only could be meaningful when we sit in the comfort of our home in a quiet and peaceful environment without any distractions. And of course, we light the candle and the flame represent, as we mentioned a moment ago, the neshama, the soul of the individual that we're reciting Yizkor for. Let us try to really connect during those moments with our loved ones. And let us give them the gift that they're asking us for. The act of a mitzvah, of a kind deed, charity, all of these valuable treasures and gifts that they no longer have the ability to do, and we do it on their behalf. And finally, friends, Achron Shel Pesach, the last day of Pesach, is associated with the future redemption of Mashiach, whereas the first 7 days we talk about leaving Egypt. There's a custom on the last day of Pesach this year, it's Thursday, to celebrate Mashiach Seudah, a special meal prepared for Mashiach, where we drink the 4 cups of wine and eat the matzah and sing songs. And I encourage you to do that with your family. And please God, before the end of the holiday on this Achron Shel Pesach, we shall already be celebrating in Jerusalem with the rebuilding of the third temple, with the arrival of Mashiach, amen. And I leave you with the following story that I heard from my dear brother, who's a rabbi in Port Washington, Long Island. And he says that a number of years ago, he was visiting a patient in the hospital, a dear friend who was a Holocaust survivor, who had gone through the horrors of the Holocaust. And he was sitting there at his bedside. The patient was clearly very much not well, and it looked like his end was near. My brother asked him, he said, "Joe, how did you not only survive all that you've witnessed, but you went on to create a beautiful business and an even nicer family, and your attitude in life has always been upbeat. How did you manage that?" And he said, "It was the little secret and the few precious words that I heard from my mother the night that she was taken away to be gassed. This was the last message she left for me. My mother called me to her and said, 'Joe, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this. I don't know if the future is uncertain, but I would like to tell you that life is like a play.'" And he said, my mother liked the theater. And in a play, we know the scene opens up and the actors and actresses perform their act, and then they go back scene and the next scene opens up, and on it goes. So she asked him, "Where do you think the first actors and actresses go to? Do they leave the hall?" And the answer is, of course not. They're part of the same play. And therefore, second, third, fourth, fifth scene, throughout the entire play, it's part of their production, it's part of their performance. And therefore, they have a vested interest in knowing that it's going to succeed. So they don't leave the scene, rather they stand backstage, watching, observing, and cheering the other actors and actresses on, hoping that they perform to the best of their ability. So she said to her son, and these were the last words and her final message, that if we are torn apart from one another, God forbid, and I don't make it. And as it turns out, she didn't make it, unfortunately. She perished in the hands of the Nazis. Yimach Shemam. I want you to know that when you're feeling sad, and when you're feeling down, and when you don't feel you have the energy to carry on, or the courage to continue to live life, know that I am standing backstage and cheering you on, and I'm giving you my blessings and my encouragement to live on, and to live a happy, virtuous life, and to recognize the value of every moment in life, and the impact that you could have on the individuals that you come in contact with. Please know that I'm there by your side, cheering you on. And therefore, do not drop the ball, and make sure to live life to its fullest, having me in mind. And therefore, I leave you, my friends, with this message before the start of the holiday. When we light the candle and recite the Yizkor, try to envision our loved ones and the great and holy and sacred neshamot, souls that came before us, and to recognize that the life that we are living presently and the mitzvah that we are performing comes after years and years, decades, centuries, thousands of years of good deeds, of self-sacrifice. And life is a continuum. History is a continuum. We are continuing what they started off, and we should understand that when we recite Yizkor, and for that matter, throughout the year, but specifically during Yizkor, where our loved ones are there to the point where in a shul, in a synagogue, when Yizkor is recited, those that have their parents still alive are asked to leave the room to allow for the privacy of those that have to recite Yizkor. We have to try to understand and envision and appreciate the fact that they're standing by our side, encouraging us, cheering us on, telling us that I know life is difficult and we're in exile and we're experiencing this coronavirus where people are not well, and unfortunately people have lost their lives, and there is all sorts of financial stresses and so on and so forth, and they're telling us to hold on a little bit more. Mashiach is about to come, and to do the mitzvah in loving memory of their precious souls. And as I said before, to do it having in mind that we're doing it on their behalf because they no longer have that ability and we do, which is a great responsibility and a great merit. So I'd like to conclude by wishing you a beautiful end of Pesach, a meaningful holiday. Tonight is Shvi Shel Pesach, the 7th day of Pesach. Tomorrow night begins Acharon Shel Pesach, the final day of Pesach, on which we recite Yizkor on Thursday, which represents and is all about the future redemption with Mashiach. Let us try to connect with the energy, with the spiritual energy of this day. Let us recite Yizkor and attach it to something tangible, the act of a mitzvah. And this is the greatest gift we can bestow upon our loved ones. Chag Sameach, happy holiday, and I look forward to hearing from you very soon.